Everything Old is New Again is sponsored by the law office of Douglas Viviani. Douglas Viviani has been providing quality legal service for over 26 years. We're a general practice firm and can handle any legal matter you may have for a reasonable fee. If you're involved in a car accident, starting a business, planning your estate, or need a criminal attorney, please call 631-681-1910 or email us at vivianilaw@aol.com for a free consultation. Get the justice you deserve. Contact the law office of Douglas Viviani at vivianilaw@aol.com.
You are listening to Everything Old is New Again with Doug Viviani and David Cohen. Is that right, Bob? I know. Dave and Doug. Dave and Doug. Yeah, they'll do. Okay.
They'll do. So will so will you, Chuck and Bob from Soap. This is Everything Old is New Again. I'm Douglas Viviani. I'm here with the omnipresent David Cohen.
Omnipresent. I like it.
You like that?
Yeah.
We are responding on this show and the next show to some responses we received from our 9-episode epic, The September Silliness of...
Best sitcoms of all time.
Which we came out to be Seinfeld.
That was the ultimate winner, but we got a lot of slack for our choices.
We did. There was slack, and there were emails.
Yeah.
And we have, in this show, we've had someone is going to be calling in. We'll talk about that shortly. We also have my brother who is here, Dr. John Viviani, who was talking about the UFOs. We had him on previously, if you recall.
He was so ticked off he showed up in the studio, so that's a good response.
He knew we were doing the show. We didn't have him really labeled in to do it, but he's knocking on the glass door.
He was angry.
Yes, and we're here at MacArthur Airport, and we had to call him in. So here he is, prepared or not, to discuss why he does or does not agree with our selections. Let me just start with one that a email came, or a number of emails came in, people talking about this show.
If one piece of candy gets past you and into the packing room unwrapped, you're fired.
Yes, ma'am.
Let her roll!
Well, this is easier. Yeah, we can handle this, okay? Listen, Ethel, I think we're fighting a losing game. Here she comes.
Fine, you're doing splendidly. Speed it up a little!
We had a Loretta from Dix Hills talking about the Lucy, I Love Lucy show when we talked about our 1950s winner, which was the Honeymooners. And she was arguing that how do you even have a final 3 or 4 or 5, if you will, without I Love Lucy, which in one form or another, Lucy was on television 25 years.
Yeah.
And you do have to honor and respect certainly the time frame that she was in the 50s and 60s and what she did as a comedian. But to me, in my world, as we like to say...
I thought we were going to stop the...
That's why I said that in quotes. In my world, I want to mock myself.
I promise you would never use that again.
I never did that.
Oh, okay. Maybe I was wishful thinking on my part.
You're going to have a nightmare tonight hearing that. But in my view, how about that?
Okay.
She was wonderful, but the slapstick, after a while, it's the same show all the time.
Yeah, I agree with that. It is the same show. It's funny, but the theme is the same. It never changed.
And she can be really funny with the slapstick. Don't get me wrong, but I mean, 25 years of it, sooner or later, it gets to be a little much.
Right. Okay, so Loretta, you're wrong.
Right. So that one's out, and since she's not in the studio, forget it. We're not even going to consider that show anymore. But no, it is a valid point, because on its own, honestly, it could have made the final 5 if we didn't do this business of every decade.
Nah.
All right, so we'll disagree on that one. But let's talk about something that the doctor finds to be a problem is Get Smart in the 1960s winning that decade. What do you think should be the story on that?
Well, I love Get Smart. I just think it was a little too much slapstick. And again, I think that was the same thing over and over again after you did The Cone of Silence and His Apartment and Jaime the Robot. It was a bit of more of a formula. I think that Dick Van Dyke was much better written, and it was more unpredictable. It didn't have the same formula. It was a sophisticated show. I go for more sophisticated comedy, not just the pratfalls and slapstick, things like that.
You're a sophisticated kind of guy,
Yeah, I
John,
am.
so I see that.
I understand that, but I'm not a sophisticated kind of guy. Let's see what I like.
There he is, my son-in-law, the 150-year-old teenage punk.
I just can't fight a chick. I gotta get out there and drag it with the gases. Otherwise, doll, I might blow my cool.
I'm gonna build us a car. that I'm going to take to the drag races next Saturday, and that I personally will win back our car from this lead-foot Baylor by beating him at his own game.
I don't know what to say. That show to me just knocks me out.
First of all, it's the Munsters. Just so people don't know,
Yes.
it's the Munsters.
I'll put the Munsters ahead of Get Smart, too.
Is it ahead
Wow.
of Dick Van Dyke?
No.
All right, so that's why we'll start with the Munsters in your view.
Because of the sophistication?
No, Munsters, well, plus if you're going to go, it only lasts for 2 years, right, if you're going by time frame. But, I mean, I still think, it had to get...
What was that sound? Was that an imitation of Herman Munster?
Yeah, that was Herman Munster. Munsters are great, but not as good as Dick Van Dyke, I don't think, although I think they're pretty close.
All right, let's compare. Let's hear a little something Dick Van Dyke can say.
What do you want me to say?
Well, just once, I would like to hear you say it like you really meant it.
Do I give you the impression that I don't mean it?
Very, very clearly.
Well, I'm sorry. Then I'll try to say it more convincingly. I don't mind that you and Jerry are going skiing this weekend, and I hope you both have a wonderful time.
All right, boy, if you feel that way, I'll just stay home then.
Because honestly, that sounds like my wife. She's not going to listen to the show. I'm not going to allow her. That is what she says every time I come out to record this show.
Is that why you did not vote for Dick Van Dyke? Too close to home?
I really love Dick Van Dyke, no doubt. But I don't know that I could watch it over and over again. Munsters I can watch over and over again. And now back to Get Smart, to me, I can watch that over and over again, too. Just so creative.
I thought, yeah, I understand what you're saying, John. I do. I think that Dick Van Dyke was definitely, better written. It was more intelligent. It was, I agree with that. Get Smart, though, if I'm watching for 30 minutes, to me it just had more laughs in it in a 30-minute period than Dick Van Dyke did. But that's my criteria. It doesn't have to be yours.
Yeah, I guess if you're looking at the creative effort that goes into it and the writing behind it, and so you're going to say best show, I'm not just looking at, just the couple of laughs of, slapstick laughs here and there, just the thought process behind the whole show.
Well, talk about slapstick. I mean, that show did have...
Oh, yeah, he was a great physical comedian.
Tremendous physical, but he also combined that with the verbal barbs, if you will. And you've also got that fellow, what was his name, the comedian that would do the one-liners, Maury Amsterdam, all the time.
Plus you had the neighbor went on to become a great producer.
Jerry Paris.
Yeah.
Jerry Paris.
Actually,
right?
great director.
Directed
Tremendous. Directed Happy Days and other shows.
Yeah.
So tremendous talent on the stage there. Speaking of which, and talking about comedy in terms of slapstick, let's listen to an interview with Ken Berry from F Troop about his pratfalls.
And we put together this sequence where I did a series of near accidents and falls and stuff. And my character was so focused that he couldn't see anything else, and he was reading a letter. And he walked along, and all these things were happening or about to happen to him, and still reading the letter and exiting the shot. Never noticed any of that stuff happen. Buster Keaton was a friend, and he called me. He said, that was a good gag you did last night.
I mean, he did add a lot to that show, but what do you think of that show, F Troop?
It was good. I think that's on par with I see it more like a Get Smart type show. It was good. It was funny. I don't know if it's got longevity, but it was.
And we're back to
yeah. No,
really.
I like when you make a left at the
Right.
rock that looks like a bear, and a right at the bear that looks like a rock.
I mean, if you can remember a quote like that from a show from the '60s, you got to say it. It's got some substance.
Well, I'm abnormal. I remember things like that.
How about "It is balloon"?
But how many quotes and lines do you remember from Dick Van Dyke?
That's true, not much, because it was more of a story than a one-liner type thing.
Right. So, but you would still give it the edge over the other
because
two.
I'm not going by one-liners. It's not a stand-up act.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Interesting. Okay.
Right.
Well, there were other people that had called in, or I should say emailed in, we've called later on, and talked about All in the Family, and why did that not make them grade?
Say what back? What you said about my work being nothing. It's helping people, and I think people helping people is important.
I was supposed to be the first one to go. You had no right to leave me that way without giving me just one more chance to say I love you.
Now, I'll leave the door open on this one, but to me, what a tremendous show. But then it turned, and there were many episodes that was serious. That, to me, takes it out of the sitcom. Doesn't mean it wasn't a great show, but it takes it out of the sitcom genre.
It tackled a lot of issues at the time and it got serious about it, about Vietnam, about Watergate. Racism, absolutely. Transvestites. I mean, you name it. It was on the show, and not always in a humorous way. It was sending a message.
So it was more than just a comedy. So it wasn't. You can't just classify it just as a comedy. I think it did evolve, and he's right. It did get serious at the end.
And the point we made originally was that it did jump the shark, which was another negative when it just started to go on without Edith, and then without Mike and Gloria, and became Archie's place. And then who was that girl that suddenly he was living with?
That was
Danielle
horrible.
Brisbois, whatever her name was.
Right.
Yeah, it just petered out.
So we understand that. I think that's for the 70s. Back to Get Smart. Do we concede the point on Get Smart, or we dig in on this? I mean, it is a tough. 60s to me was the toughest decade there is.
Yeah, it was tough.
So, I mean, it didn't go to the final three, so I can kind of concede. I can understand a Dick Van Dyke, but I'm a big fan of that F Troop too. But I can't help it.
Right. I say Dick Van Dyke. Why not? Yeah, I think it's just as valid as
All right,
any
so
other.
we've gone to the videotape, and it's Dick Van Dyke.
Oh,
We'll
that's
be
worth
back
my-
right
worth
after
my
these
gas
commercials.
money.
This portion of Everything Old is New Again is sponsored by ResumeDoctorInc.com. When you're seeking to change your career, apply for a promotion, or are trying to find a job, your resume is the first thing that's seen that represents you to a potential employer. Make sure your resume makes a clear, concise, and professional impression of who you are so you can get that job interview. Send your current resume to ResumeDoctorInc@AOL.com for a free online review. You'll receive a timely reply with a reasonable quote to properly prepare your resume. Let them make sure you have a resume that will get you noticed. Send your resume or questions to ResumeDoctorInc@AOL.com. That's ResumeDoctorInc@AOL.com.
Who can turn the world on with her smile? Who can take a nothing day and suddenly make it all seem worthwhile? Well, it's you, girl, and you should know it. With each glance and every little movement you show.
Welcome back to Everything Old is New Again. Dave is throwing his hat in the air as we speak.
Sonny Curtis, written by Sonny Curtis.
We are joined by Michelle from New York City. She's a huge fan, listens to us by podcast, everythingoldisnewagain.biz.
Hi, Michelle.
Hi.
Great to have you on board. I know
Thank
you were
you.
Here for the first section of our show here, and you bit your tongue, and I do appreciate that. We wanted to have a little civility here, but at this point, I wanted to go back and revisit with you. We started this section with a Mary Tyler Moore theme there, and we'll get back to that in a few minutes, but we were talking off the air. I think you may have a comment or two about the last segment, talking about Dick Van Dyke. Did you also agree with my brother on that?
I do. I totally agree with your brother. I mean, for the same reasons, too, is that it's story-driven. It was a lot more intelligent and sophisticated. And the other shows, to me, like, I mean, The Munsters was really cute, you know? And the F Troop was also, like, a cute show, but... yeah, Dick Van Dyke for me just really would win that category.
You know, as you're saying that to me, I'm kind of thinking in my mind also that, I don't know why it popped in, but there is quite a variety of topics and type of humor on Dick Van Dyke that when you look at F Troop and the Munsters, kind of the same, different events, but kind of the same approach to their humor. But Dick Van Dyke, you know, had slapstick, also had some thoughtful humor, also had some family humor, also had some children's when the child was born, and there's the kid running around there. So, I mean, do you join with me on that, or where do we stand?
I do. I mean, I think they're all really entertaining shows, but it's just for me personally. I like stories. I like to watch families. I mean, but in the moment of watching F Troop, it was very funny and very entertaining. But if you're going to compare them and pick one out of the era, definitely I would think Dick Van Dyke would win.
Right. So, and from a female's point of view, Wrangler Jane doesn't hold your attention to keep you watching F Troop, so to speak, as someone you can align with the entire time.
Not really. No. I really liked for the time, I thought, you know, it's still kind of sexist when you look back at it. You know, Dick Van Dyke with, you know, Mary and everything. She was home, you know, a happy homemaker. But that was a reflection of the time. So you really can't fault it. But I like that she was a very good, you know, she stood up to him. You know, she was a strong character.
Okay, and speaking of strong characters, there were 4 strong characters in all of the family, and we had kind of looked at the downside of All in the Family, but it was a wonderful show, was funny, but we did talk about it being serious in nature towards the end. Did you find that? Did that give you some impression of the show, long-lasting impression as we have, or do you feel that?
Oh, yeah. I never like when sitcoms become serious. I hate that. Right. I hated it. I hated it with a lot of different shows whenever it got too serious.
And Mary Tyler Moore never did?
No.
Until almost like the last show, maybe they were crying, and I can remember them in that huddle.
Exactly.
Well, but you wanted to see that. Yeah.
Right. With All in the Family, like, I think that the really, like, topics that they, touched on racism and everything, like, for instance, I mean, I think if you keep people laughing and, like, push the envelope, like, with comedy, with laughing at it, it's a lot more effective. Because, if you want to cry, go, like, watch a movie or a drama,
Makes total sense, especially for a sitcom. You've got a half hour.
I think so.
Let's listen to what Mary Richards herself, if you will, Mary Tyler Moore, has to say about that.
Do you realize how many young women you collectively influenced through this? Why did Mary Richards captivate and really capture the hearts of so many people?
I think it was because our writers wrote so honestly and with such love of comedy and their dedication to keeping the comedy real.
Now, there are two reasons why you called, and I know one of them was the Mary Tyler Moore show in the 70s. We came out with Odd Couple, but you wanted to inform us about your opinion about Mary Tyler Moore, so I'd love to hear what you have to say about that show.
Well, I mean, first of all, I thought I remember when I was listening to your shows, I was thinking, well, why isn't one of the categories groundbreaking? Like, that it pushed the genre forward, and for groundbreaking things. So I think, like, that... And I didn't like your category of, like, one-liners, like stuff that, for me, it could have been replaced. But anyway, for that reason, I thought Mary Tyler Moore should definitely get out of the decade and into your finals, because it really was, like, I think, one of the very first sitcoms where there was a woman character. She was single, she didn't need a man. She never had a man. She never had a boyfriend on the show. She was never engaged. She had her own career that was independent of any man. And I got, and it was hilarious and so well written. I mean, even better written than like Dick Van Dyke, really well written. And for that reason, I just didn't, it's original. So yeah, I thought, I really did. I was like, what? I can't believe that you picked Odd Couple over Mary Tyler. I can't believe you picked almost anything over Mary Tyler Moore. I think you should have made the finals for sure.
Did you have a particular issue with the Odd Couple itself?
Well, I mean, again, Odd Couple is super hilarious. I mean, it's it's funny. I love the premise of it, but it wasn't original. It came from the Neil Simon play, and then it was a movie. So it was like it wasn't original. It wasn't groundbreaking. It was just like, let's take a good idea that worked in the movie and the play. I'm like, let's make a sitcom out of it, which is fine, but it's just, I don't think it makes it a finalist. That's what
also, it's something with Mary Tyler Moore. In my viewing of that show as a younger man, I remember that it was new in that it wasn't one line after the other, or just let me do a setup line and then a joke. It was more of a show of a good feeling of this group of people and the things that they're going through. But it wasn't just, there weren't one-liners. That was the fellow went on to Gavin MacLeod went on to Love Boat. He did some one-liners, but certainly that wasn't the heart of the show.
No.
No, it wasn't. But
and I think that was important. Don't you think that was something new that sitcoms were doing, or at least this show may have brought to the table?
Well, I think once, it's like very character driven. But I think that there were like hilarious lines in context with the story. That you're not maybe gonna walk away saying them, but in context with the build up for that punchline. There were lots of punchlines.
But they were telling more of a story, which I'm agreeing with you, as opposed to the Munsters or F Troop, which was kind of like setting up a kind of a situation, but we want to do that so that we can do a bunch of jokes about it, about whatever that is.
That's true. Yeah. And I just prefer the other type.
I have to totally agree with Michelle.
I don't know who that was. I don't know where that come
you?
from.
Who is that?
John. It was John.
Brother.
Oh, that's your brother.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
I understand that. And they certainly also were surrounded, and she was like a ringleader, surrounded by a hugely talented crew.
Well, that's a credit to the writing and a credit to the acting, because any of those supporting characters I wouldn't even say they were supporting. There was an ensemble. Any of those characters could have, and a lot of them did, go on to have their own shows. They were strong enough to carry a show. You know, Lou Grant, right? Had a. It wasn't a sitcom, but it was a show.
And Phyllis.
All the women were very strong. You're right.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah, that's for that reason I loved it. And
now,
then
Michelle, when you were watching it as it was when it was on, what were your feelings? Did you look forward to this show? Did you smile when it was on? You laughed? Did you?
I smiled a lot while it was on. Yes. I think it was on Saturday nights, which is so odd now, thinking the big shows were on Saturday night. You know.
Yeah, I remember after. I think it was after Newhart, right?
No, before
Newhart. Mary Tyler Moore, Love American Style, Carol Burnett.
Right, and then eventually Love Boat after that.
So that was a big night of TV. But yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was very young, but sure. I mean, I fantasized about living in my own apartment in Minneapolis and by myself,
That's great.
I did.
I think it is great to hear that, someone that can associate with the show, kind of like we do, but it's a different show that we're not aligned with. It doesn't mean it's not a wonderful show and had a great effect on people, just like this did.
Right.
Dave?
Maybe we were being, I don't know, could we have been very male-centric with this whole thing and just blown over Mary Tyler Moore?
I think that you guys were a little male-centric in your picks. I mean, yes, I do.
It is possible because, The Odd Couple...
We're males, by the way, so it would be male-centric.
And think
it's
about
possible.
the women on Odd Couple. They were very, I know, the Peacock sisters and, the ex-wives. There was nobody.
Right, no females to align with,
Pigeon Sisters, by the way. Not the Peacock
Not that it wasn't funny. It certainly, I loved that show.
All right, you know what? We loved it too, and I will have to reconvene on this whole thing. I think you may be swaying us a little bit on this one as well. Let's just go out with a little bit of The Odd Couple.
Everything Old is New Again is sponsored by the law office of Douglas Viviani. Douglas Viviani has been providing quality legal service for over 26 years. We're a general practice firm and can handle any legal matter you may have for a reasonable fee. If you're involved in a car accident, starting a business, planning your estate, or need a criminal attorney, please call 631-681-1910 or email us at vivianilaw@aol.com for a free consultation. Get the justice you deserve. Contact the law office of Douglas Viviani at vivianilaw@aol.com.
You went back to the jockeys? Wrong again. Oh, no.
What?
Don't you see what's going on here? No boxers, no jockeys. The only thing between him and us is a thin layer of gabardine. Kramer, say it isn't so.
Oh, it'd be so. I'm out there, Jerry, and I'm loving every minute of it.
And we're loving being on the air. Everything Old is New Again. I'm Douglas Viviani, and I'm with the omnipresent David Cohen.
Good evening.
Thank you. We shouldn't use that tone because this is the show about comedy, if you will. We're continuing
sitcoms.
Our discussion of the sitcom, and the last week's show was so invigorating and enjoyable that we've asked the same two guests to come back this week to talk about a couple of more shows that they have a little bit of a problem with, if you will.
And they said yes.
Yeah, he did. My brother is here. He had to come back. He couldn't say no. And
he
Michelle
has nothing to do.
That's true. Yeah. Michelle from New York is here in New York City.
Wow.
And she's on the phone. Michelle, you still there?
Hi.
All right, terrific.
Hi again.
It's great to hear you here. We've had some great feedback from everything you had to say about Mary Tyler Moore at the end of our last show. So we're a little bit up in the air. We seem to have changed our mind on the 60s, and we seem to be a little bit swayed from your arguments on Mary Tyler Moore. So I don't know if that affects the ultimate result, but it certainly affects kind of the steps that we got to the final three. Yeah. And at this point, I played Seinfeld because we talked off the air. Obviously, you've emailed us at oldnewagain at AOL.com, and we had a conversation about why did we put Seinfeld into the 1980s, and by so doing, we may have affected the results. Is that what your argument is?
Yeah, it's like, I might have gotten pregnant in 1998, but I had my baby in 1999. So, you know what I mean? It's like just because they started the show, the whole show was in the 90s. So I think that is the quintessential 90s show, Seinfeld. So I was really disappointed that it was in the 90s.
All right, now, argumento, if the show, let's just say we buy your argument, if you will, I got to say that again, that the 1990s should have Seinfeld in it, then do you feel that the 90s should have won Seinfeld over what the eventual winner was, Raymond? Let's start there.
God, yes.
Are you kidding? Of course it would have.
No contest.
All right, well, I had in your world. I like to say
in everyone's world.
Wait, Michelle
in
was
a
starting.
woman's world, or I don't know, whatever.
No, say in my world. I like to hear that.
All right, I'll stay in your world.
No, in your world, I'm saying.
What world are we in?
We're always in Doug's world.
Okay.
All right, so let's assume that that's the case, but Seinfeld still wins there, so the ultimate winner may still be Seinfeld in this scenario. But what are you saying then about the 1980s? What show out of what was there should have risen to the top instead of Seinfeld?
I mean, listen, I know it jumped the shark, don't get me wrong, but I think Roseanne definitely was, again, like I said last week, so groundbreaking, not just for women, because I don't like to always make it about women, but just for shows in general, to show like the blue-collar worker and life on the other side. I don't know. It just was like a glimpse into that. And again, until it took itself too seriously, it never took itself. I mean, I guess there were some shows that were a little serious, but they always brought it back to comedy.
Let's see what we have to hear about that.
Okay. You are a big, fat guy with absolutely no self-control. You're Jerry Garcia without the music.
Let's back up here. You're calling me fat?
Yeah, I'm calling you fat.
Well, if that ain't the big fat pot calling the kettle black.
You better not be calling me fat.
Well, that's what I'm doing. Fat, 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 fat.
Other than that sounding like Thanksgiving at my house, which is funny unto itself. I don't know. This is just me. Again, I'm going to go back to, if you remember, of course, you listened to the show. Anyone that's out there that heard our show on the 80s, to me, this Roseanne is constant bickering, fighting, yelling. I don't think it's funny. Just to me, I don't think it's funny. And I think the All in the Family kind of did that in a funny way. Honeymooners did that, and you saw the love between the couple. I don't know. You tell me. Do you feel that you feel the love between those two in this show? Maybe I'm missing something.
Oh, listen, they were very sexually attracted to each other too. I mean, I don't know if you caught the show a lot, but they were always jumping into bed together. So yeah,
I agree. I mean, Doug, you and I disagreed on this actually.
Jumping
in the
into bed
original
doesn't
show.
mean you love somebody.
In my world, it does.
I love it. There you go.
Good.
It might be the best of the 2015 in my world. Somebody else said that. Well, listen, I saw the show where there was a politician at the door, and she was, bitching and moaning at this guy because she couldn't get from the government what she wanted. They're talking about their weight all the time. The sister was abused by the boyfriend. She got married too early, was arguing with her husband about that all the time. So there were serious, discussions that went on in the show. I'm not putting the show down because of that. Because honestly, I think, to me, Roseanne did well at the serious topics, honestly. But the funny stuff wasn't funny to me. That's just me.
Oh, I see.
I think that is just you. It is just you.
Me
It was
too.
I was John too.
It's me too. It's not funny.
Wow.
Michelle, what do you? It's a different point of view. Do you feel that opens a light bulb, let's say, over your head? I don't know.
Well, I mean, I don't think you make a bad point. They did do a good job. I'm thinking especially of Jackie, the sister, when she was being hit.
Right.
That was a really good show, and there was a lot of humor in it. But they they took a really serious issue. I thought that was a really, really good show. But I mean, I'm thinking was that more powerful than some of the just straight on funny stuff? I mean, you kind of have a point, but oh God.
I'll let you listen. I'll let you think about that for a moment while we turn to Cosby, which may have been the competitor then in this scenario.
Okay. Have you ever seen the real Santa? Is he Caucasian or African American or Asian?
Santa Claus is whatever you are in that house. When he comes down the chimney, let's say that you were Japanese. He would be zoom Japanese.
What color is he at the North Pole?
You have to ask Mrs. Santa Claus.
Okay. Just wanted to throw that in there because I think that if we're throwing out Seinfeld from the 80s, we can go back to Roseanne certainly, but I wanted to throw in the idea because the Cosby Show certainly was something that was popular at the time. Whether it's a great show or not, we could talk about, but was popular during the 80s for sure. Number one all many weeks. What did you think?
I mean, I think the thing with Cosby is that I remember them, it being said that it really brought back the sitcom. I mean, it gave it life, because I think at the time, you remember when like all the big shows were like Dallas and what it was, Dynasty and Melrose Place and those types of shows, and the sitcom was really dying out. And I think Cosby revived it. Thank goodness. But I think it also was a great show. But I think it also was groundbreaking. Like, I like that column. Like, I mean, that category again. Like, it broke ground. It was a African-American family. Not every issue was about race, which I love. And it brought back the comedy to television.
And one other thing it did, I think, bring back was the family to the sitcom. So if you don't have time to go through all of it, but if you go through the 70s sitcoms, much of them were not family-oriented at all.
That's true.
And if they were, there was a problem with the family. So this was a nice.
It was a successful family. They were not in the ghetto.
Yeah, they really professed the love for each other and all that. That was okay to do. We kind of had gotten away from that a little bit. So I can understand it. Do you think now, if you look at Roseanne and Cosby, Michelle, where do you feel either of those two rule the 80s, or are we missing something?
I think because Cosby also got away so drastically from stereotyping, whether it was, the wife, being a strong character, a lawyer, out on her, not out on her own, but, making money too. That was great. And also African American family that everybody could relate to. Like it was meant for everybody, that show. But I love Roseanne because of Roseanne herself. I just think, to me it was so funny. I mean, it was so funny.
Okay.
So,
but I think your overall point, and I admit it, I mean, I think we made a mistake with putting Seinfeld. I mean, we were trying to be very technical about this, that if a sitcom started in a decade, that was the decade it belonged. But in retrospect, I think we knocked out too many good sitcoms from the 80s. And
also, well, yes, for the 80s. This
and a weak one for the 90s, Raymond.
Yes, and this is unique to Seinfeld, which is a unique show also, in that in all of the decades we did this, there's only one show really that started in one decade in the 90s, let's say 89, 79, whatever, and went over into the next decade.
Maybe.
So to give us a benefit of the doubt there. So we're saying that we would consider this argument, and so you would, if I listen to you right, you're saying Roseanne would win in the 80s, Michelle.
I think it edges out Cosby, because Cosby could get a little sentimental at times, and I hate that. And I know that Roseanne's jumping the shark so drastically really does put it back a little bit. Yes, I think it edges out Cosby, though.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Well, we'll consider that one for sure, and we're going to be continuing this discussion on Everything Old is New again on the other half of the break, so we'll be right back.
Well, looks like the sands of time have run out on her, Mr. Kincaid, huh?
This portion of Everything Old is New Again is sponsored by ResumeDoctorInc.com. When you're seeking to change your career, apply for a promotion, or are trying to find a job, your resume is the first thing that's seen that represents you to a potential employer. Make sure your resume makes a clear, concise, and professional impression of who you are so you can get that job interview. Send your current resume to ResumeDoctorInc@AOL.com for a free online review. You'll receive a timely reply with a reasonable quote to properly prepare your resume. Let them make sure you have a resume that will get you noticed. Send your resume or questions to ResumeDoctorInc@AOL.com. That's ResumeDoctorInc@AOL.com.
We're back, and Everything Old is New again, letting the fans argue with the hosts. I'm not going to say
the experts.
Maybe I was hesitating there. Michelle from New York City is with us, and my brother, Dr. John Viviani, is here. And we had just gone out in the last clip. If you recall that clip, it's kind of obscure. I'm just going to ask you to listen to that again for 2 seconds. Number 13.
Well, looks like the sands of time.
That's Don Knotts.
Mr. Kincaid, huh?
This is Cosby's show from the 70s, which I thought was hysterical. It only lasted 2 years.
fun. Now, why don't you just cool it?
And that's
You
Mark
guys, I'm
Hamill.
warning you.
Luke?
That's Mark Hamill, Luke himself, from the Cosby Show in the 70s, and he was Chet Kincaid, a teacher. He only lasted 2 years, a very funny show, but he wasn't getting what he wanted. In other words, he wanted to produce that show a certain way and have certain issues discussed, which later on became the topics of the Cosby Show, which we just talked about last segment.
Interesting.
But this was the precursor. This was his first foray into comedy on television. Very talented man. We're back. We started this with talking about should the fans speak back, and if they do, what do they say to us? Well, they're saying that we were wrong on many levels. Now we're turning to the 2000s. We started with the Curb Your Enthusiasm theme. Why did we do that? Doctor, what's that all about?
Well, first of all, Curb, I think, is so much better than if you're comparing it to Big Bang. Curb is Seinfeld on steroids. So if you like Seinfeld, you should love Curb. It's a different format though, because it's an hour and it takes a while to set up the story to get the laughs going. But when you do laugh, I find it gut bursting funny. It's just I have people over my house to watch that, and you're literally laughing so hard that you're crying almost. That's how I feel about Curb. The writing's fantastic, and I think Larry David's a genius.
Well, I mean, I think Larry David certainly had a big hand. We'll just start with the Seinfeld reference. He maybe we'd all know, helped create Seinfeld with Jerry Seinfeld. He was a producer of that, and I don't know if he wrote many of the episodes. He certainly influenced them. Yeah. He did write many. I think he may have had influence.
Maybe we can live without libraries, people like you and me. Sure, we're too old to change the world. But what about that kid sitting down, opening a book right now in a branch of the local library and finding drawings of peepees and wee-wees and a cat in the hat? Doesn't he deserve better? This is about that kid's right to read a book without getting his mind warped. Maybe that's how you get your kicks. You and your good time buddies.
Good time buddies.
Michelle, any thoughts about Seinfeld, at this point, comparing it to, anything in the 90s? Let's just finish that off.
Well, I mean, it's like what your brother said about Curb, which I loved also, but like, when my husband and I used to watch Seinfeld, fresh, that night, we used to fall off our couch laughing.
Right.
Now, I have never fallen off my couch laughing at anything ever since or before. I just think it wins hands down. I can't argue with Seinfeld.
Well, that's a great segue right into a little bit. We could just hit a smidge of Curb and see if it's the same kind of comedy.
We're kind of having a little bit of a problem with the bare midriff.
With my shirt?
This is all exposed in the stomach.
Do you know that I have lost 68 pounds in 2 years?
That is fantastic.
Thank you.
I'm so happy for you.
I'm very proud of it, and I want to flaunt what I've got.
You can flaunt 2/3 of the day outside of the office, and then you got 1/3 non-flaunt. You have to flaunt 24 hours? Well, why not take a break in the flaunt?
You can hear Seinfeld kind of show in there, right?
Well, you got to know for that clip, though, that she's still overweight.
Right, of course. So tell me a little something about, Curb, and not versus Seinfeld. I don't know if we're going to, challenge that, but Curb versus the 2000s. We did Big Bang, so you feel it's head and shoulders above anything else?
No, I think it's much. If you're going to compare it to Big Bang, my problem. I just wanted Curb to get its due justice. I think it's really good, but my problem is, I guess I'm more anti-Big Bang than pro-Curb at this point right now.
Why is that?
Yeah, what's that?
If you're going to compare them, well, first of all, I don't think. Well, Big Bang's was on the networks, right? So what's its competition? It's got longevity, but what's its competition? Like Mike and Molly, 2.5 Men. I mean, these aren't great shows. It's
the Goldbergs right now. It's got.
But to me, the current it's well written. I find Big Bang amusing, and after a while, but I get tired of the nerdy aspect of them not being able to associate with women. How many times can you be like, oh, I don't know how to be around a girl, or because I'm a nerd? It's well written, but it's just not great.
Well, nothing wrong with being a nerd, and in that scenario, nerds got the women. If you follow, obviously you're not a fan of the show, which is fine.
It's okay. I'll watch it, but I'm not going to watch it over and over and over again.
All right, let's see why we like it.
You know who's going to be the bravest person in the Marvel Universe? Whoever has to give She-Hulk a bikini wax.
You want to talk brave? How about Captain America's undocumented Mexican gardener?
He's not braver than whoever uses the bathroom after the thing.
As usual, you're all wrong. The bravest person in the Marvel Universe is the doctor who gives Wolverine his prostate exam.
Michelle, I'm going to ask you, do you find that to be groundbreaking in any way? That's certainly one of your categories.
Absolutely not.
I don't think that's big. I think it's amusing, but I don't think it's groundbreaking. I think if it wasn't for Jim Parsons, that show would have gone nowhere.
Interesting. You don't think that, I'll ask the doctor, you talked about nerds, do you feel this show, I mean, it's going to be on the season, after season for 13 years.
Again, no competition.
But the question is, did it not change our society with respect to the opinion of nerds and have that become a little more acceptable to like comic books and so forth?
No.
I think it did.
I think it did a lot.
It had a big influence on the nerd culture.
I think people still have their opinion on people that are like, I love comic books, but it is what it is. It's like going to a Star Trek convention. You're trying to bring Star Trek back into this thing again, right? But
but don't you think it put more emphasis on that it's okay to be smart and okay to be a nerd?
Well, our whole society's changing like that because we respect computers. Look at Bill Gates, Facebook. It's not. I don't think people look down on nerds, but it's not because of Big Bang Theory. It's because we love technology.
Huh. Well, that might be a show that we need to investigate because I think that's a huge topic because I think Revenge of the Nerds back in the 80s.
But aren't we talking about it being a show being funny?
But there's also, we talk about, is it groundbreaking? Does it have characters that are unique? Of course, is it funny is certainly a category, but we had other categories.
Well, can I throw something else in there? One thing you and I talked about, Doug, on the show about this was that, there's you can put together a matrix and, chart it out which one's funnier based on certain criteria, but there's also that intangible, something about the show that makes you feel good. You can't explain why. I know with The Big Bang Theory, I watch it with my family, and I don't know, I like it.
Would you buy the DVDs and watch it 10 years from now?
No.
All right. Then
No.
I think
I don't think I'd do that with Curb
You
either.
wouldn't?
And by the way, I'm a big...
I disagree.
The Curb you can
Oh,
watch
wait,
forever.
we have a dissenter.
Michelle, you would on...
Oh, my God. Curb Your Enthusiasm is classic. Yes, you will definitely watch
Absolutely.
that than Big Bang.
I like this
Because of
Michelle.
Larry David.
This Michelle and I agree a lot.
Yeah.
Too bad you live
The other
in...
thing about Big Bang, can I just say before, I don't want to, but next time you watch it, two things. Next time you watch it, the laugh track is so distracting. It's ridiculous. The laugh track they had, one. And two, it's incredibly sexist, you guys.
So it's
Big Bang?
Oh, my God. I don't want to go into it like it's, because I could get very worked up about it, and I don't want to. But
Well,
just notice that the next time.
All right, let's have you laugh instead. We'll hear a little something here.
Who the hell did you ever mention his hands to?
I mentioned his hands to plenty of people.
You never mentioned it to me.
I always talk about your hands, how they're so soft and milky white.
No, you never said milky white.
I said milky white. Georgie, would you like some Jell-O?
Why'd you put the bananas in there?
George likes the bananas.
So let him have bananas on the side.
All right, please. I cannot have this constant bickering.
But Georgie, what about the Jell-O?
I'll take it in my room.
All right, now I have to admit, there's a show or a couple that are bickering, but not the entire show. It's just a clip here and there.
Well, it's not about them.
Right. And I love it. I don't know why. Michelle, what did you think of that? Does that make you laugh at all?
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
Seinfeld is the best.
Doctor, what do you think of the Seinfeld era?
Oh, Seinfeld's fantastic. It's definitely up there in my maybe one or two.
All right, so let's go back to the 2000s, though. Curb versus Big Bang. Dave, are we thinking twice on this based on what we're hearing?
I'm a huge Curb fan, and I don't care if I never watch it again. I'd never watch Big Bang again. To me, that's not as important. I think technically, I think Curb has it.
So then, is this show and the last show basically pulling the rug out from everything we've done, or is this the last straw in the camel's back, and our whole thing has now just fallen on its face?
Might have fallen on its face.
Wow, it's possible. But I can say one thing: we all agree that Seinfeld is the best sitcom of all time.
No, what about the Mooners?
Oh, wow. We're going to have to go have another show about that. We'll talk to you soon. Everything Old is New again. Thank you, Michelle from New York City. Thank you, Dr. John Viviani. Thank you, David Cohen. We will be back on Everything Old is New again. Listen to us at the podcast if you miss a show. Everything Old is New again.biz.